Okay, today we're doing part of the Oral History 50th Anniversary Project. It's March 14th, 1995. I'm Carol Paul from the Social Science Department. The filmmaker is Mark Gaynor, and I'd like to turn it over to the person we're interviewing. You would tell us your name, your title.
I'm Peg Smith. I'm the coordinator for the Cosmetic and Fragrance Marketing Program at FIT. This is one of the newest programs at FIT. I joined FIT as a part-time faculty member in 1977, teaching in the Fashion Buying and Merchandising Department. My own professional background was a buyer and a divisional merchandise manager in the retail world, working for companies such as May D&F in Denver, Colorado, Bloomingdale's, Belk Store Services, to name just a few. I came full-time to FIT in February of 1981, teaching in the Fashion Buying and Merchandising Department. And in the spring of 1988, the then Dean of Academic Affairs, Janice Weinman, and the Acting Dean of Business and Technology, Erwin Kahn, asked me if I would be interested in chairing up a new 4-year program in cosmetic and fragrance marketing. The history behind the program is interesting. Jack Rittenberg, who was the Dean of Business and Technology, prior to my arrival at FIT, had contacted people in the industry, and Hazel Bishop in particular. Now, Hazel was a very well-known woman in her field in the 40s. She was a chemist, and she really began Hazel Bishop lipstick, which was the first indelible lipstick. And so it was natural for people in the industry to come to FIT to start a program in cosmetics. It was an AAS degree program, and although I wasn't involved with it, I know that the problem with it then was that the students with an AAS degree were not equipped to get really good entry-level jobs. And therefore, in the spring of '88, it was determined, because we now had a Bachelor of Science marketing program in the Business and Technology division, that it would be appropriate to make this into a Bachelor of Science program. Of course, like all our marketing programs at FIT, it is based on the 2+2 system, and the students still receive an AAS degree and then come into the program. So in the fall of 1988, I came into this office and began working on restructuring the program. It is an absolutely wonderful experience, and the reason it has been a wonderful experience is because the cosmetic and fragrance industry is a very special industry. From day one, it became very clear to me that these people wanted very much to work with us. I like to say that this program, and I think Toy Design also, are the quintessential examples of industry and education working together to prepare young people for careers. Let me just give you some history of how we came from fall of 1988 to spring of 1995. Our first task was to resurrect, in a sense, what had been an advisory board. And I had been told by several people in the industry that Annette Green, who was the president of the Fragrance Foundation, was the key contact person. Jack Rittenberg was still the dean of B&T, had been the dean of B&T, and I knew him, and we talked, and I was put in touch with Annette. Annette Green is one of the most, well, I think she's the most special person I've ever met in industry, totally dedicated to making this program work. And what she did first and foremost was take the original advisory board, get new members, rename it the Action Council. And truly, the emphasis is on action. These people met with me. It became obvious that they were very committed to the program. We had a curriculum committee that helped us work on new curriculum, new focus, obviously making it more marketable for the students, making sure they had entry-level jobs. We had a finance committee because the industry has an ability to raise money. I think that there are people in the college that sometimes almost go into deep shock when they hear the kinds of figures that this industry is able to raise, and I'll talk about that more specifically in a few minutes. The second thing after the Action Council and getting the curriculum committee working and setting up a finance committee as well as the executive committee was to work on a mentor program. I believe we were the first program in the college to have a mentor program. And again, I think this is evidence of the industry's commitment to the students. We have, for the students' entire senior year, a mentor for each student. And the mentor is obviously not an instructor and not a person involved with them academically, so they have a very special relationship. They normally meet once a week or once every 2 weeks, sometimes for coffee, sometimes to go to a meeting in the organization. The mentors can help the students in a variety of ways, exposing them to the industry, helping them network. Although the industry is large, everybody knows everybody, and there's a great deal of networking. They can help them with the nitty-gritties of interviewing, how to write a resume. They also can give them input, and this is very valuable. When a student is interviewing for their internship and or a job, these people know the companies, and they can give them those little inside hints on how Chanel is different from Estee Lauder and how Quest International is different from DeCoco, and you cannot buy that. And the students that really use their mentors do extremely well when they get into industry. So the Action Council, the mentor program, major parts of the program. We do require an internship. And again, the industry has been very forthcoming with internship sponsors. The internship department at the college, of course, handles the internship, but we work very closely together with my industry and myself, making sure that the internships are sound and solid. And as we add things to the curriculum, we make sure that there's representation. Let me talk about funding for a minute. Basically, as I said earlier, the cosmetic and fragrance industry has a great ability to raise money in causes they believe in. And every June, during Fragrance Week, which happens every year, it's always the first full week in June, and there are many events. One event is the Fifi Awards, which happens at Avery Fisher Hall on the Tuesday night, and it really is the Academy Awards of Fragrance, and it's great fun to be able to go.
When you say Fifi, does
Fifi.
it stands for an acronym? Does it stand for something?
I'm sure it does. I can look that up.
Sorry.
Yeah. And the Wednesday of Fragrance Week, a luncheon is held. Originally it was at the Waldorf, but we outgrew that, and we're now at the Plaza. We have a luncheon, and the purpose of the luncheon is to raise money for a scholarship program for the cosmetic and fragrance marketing program at FIT. To give you an idea, last year, in June of 1994, we netted $90,000 for the scholarship program, which simply means that the students coming into the program have a great deal of financial support. At the luncheon every year, there are 2 people honored, one person from retail, who is obviously in cosmetic and fragrance, and one person from the industry. And those scholarships are named for those people. Those scholarships are administered through the Educational Foundation and the Financial Aid Office based on need. In addition to those scholarships, we also provide a substantial scholarships grants to students who go on a summer trip, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have raised in excess of $10,000 for the library to buy books and appropriate video material for the classes. This we did by having a book party to honor Pierre Denard, who is a very famous perfume bottle designer, and his book that was published in this country. So funding is very important. We are able to do many things for the students and many things for the college through our funding program. The largest example, an enormously important example, of what the industry can do fund-wise is the building of the Annette Green Fragrance Foundation Studio, which occurred in January of 1994. This studio is an actual fragrance studio, the same size, dimension, equipment, supplies that you would find in any fragrance studio in any essential oil house. The Action Council paid for that. The cost was roughly $100,000, and it has now given us the ability to add to the curriculum a very important course in fragrance knowledge. There are many job opportunities in the fragrance industry and very, very good entry-level jobs for our students. And no, they're going to hold it. Without a fragrance studio, it's impossible to teach fragrance course. And so we have a perfumer, Virginia Bonifiglio, who is teaching in the fragrance studio, and the students are learning a great deal, and it's giving them an enormous plus, because this is the only program in any college in the United States in cosmetic and fragrance marketing, and that is certainly a plus. But having the fragrance studio and having students fully aware of how fragrances are built, what fragrance families are, identifying the essential oils and the ingredients, understanding the basics of how a fragrance is put together is vital. And with that kind of knowledge, they are prepared, as I said before, for a variety of entry-level jobs. And we're very, very pleased to have that. Since the 1988 beginnings, we have added several things to the curriculum. The original curriculum was very science-based. We do require chemistry, but I think because Hazel was a chemist, as she felt very strongly they needed to have a great deal of scientific background. In reality, when the Action Council began working with me on curriculum, we discovered that the students really needed less science and more product information. And we still require chemistry. We have added a product development workshop, which is a hands-on class for the students, where they're actually involved working as a product development team. Industry speakers come, and they will produce product at the end, and it will be juried, very much like our fashion shows in design. It will be juried by people from the industry and product development. And all of this has made the program much, much stronger. I constantly work with the industry. And when I said that this is the quintessential industry and education working together, it is. Because I meet with the mentors once a semester. I meet with the executive committee of the Action Council at least twice a semester. When we are redoing curriculum, I meet with the curriculum committee sometimes once every 2 weeks. I think sometimes I live at the Fragrance Foundation because we have so many activities. And through the generosity of the Action Council, I am able to attend all of the industry functions, which keeps me on the cutting edge of what is going on. And in order for me to chair this program, I really must have that background. It's a very special program. We are looking forward to, we recently wrote a letter of intent to Albany for this to be a freestanding program. Currently, it's housed under what we call marketing options, and to be perfectly frank, this has always been a confusing situation for everybody. And I am ready to go to the curriculum committee with the new proposed curriculum, which will make this a freestanding cosmetic and fragrance marketing department. That will afford us the opportunity to advertise the program, which is the one area that my Action Council and myself have been frustrated with, because we have so many special things to offer and such a wonderful story to tell that we would like very much to be able to advertise this. As soon as we go through the process of becoming a separate department, we already have a brochure committee of the Action Council working on a wonderful brochure, and this is typical of my industry. They are front and center, heads in to doing a wonderful brochure. And Mark Rosen, who's a very important person in the industry, and Dorothy Foster, who is a consultant and also teaches in the program, and Mark Goldsmith, who's on the executive committee, and myself, are really 90% there. with a really wonderful mailing piece that we can use in industry also. We want to use this for recruitment, but we also want to use it for industry so that they become more and more aware of the program and what we're actually doing. Recently, the college decided, much to my happiness and certainly my industry board's happiness, that people with a 2-year liberal arts degree could effectively apply to the program in cosmetic and fragrance marketing with several bridge courses from the FBM and other curriculum in the college. We're very excited about that because clearly this gives us a larger pool. It gives an exposure to young people with a liberal arts background, which is my own educational background, by the way, an ability to come into the industry. And we're very pleased.
With a liberal arts degree, a baccalaureate, are you saying?
No, AAS.
Okay, liberal arts, AAS.
Yes. They will be able to come into the program with bridge courses so that they have some background. Long ago, it seems long ago, when I first came and talked with Hazel Bishop in that spring of 1988, I remember Hazel saying to me, get this college to understand people with a liberal arts background can take cosmetic and fragrance. And she was quite right. You do not really need to have, although it's helpful certainly to have background in fashion, but the cosmetic and fragrance industry, it's important certainly to fashion, but the ties are not as tight as they are in some of our other majors. And as I said, they'll come into the program and take certain bridge courses which will give them the background in advertising and what have you. One of the, in the new program, we really do not have any new cosmetic courses because, as I've just indicated, we've already instituted those. But we're adding a fine arts course which we're very excited about. Obviously, the cosmetic and fragrance in particular, is a very aesthetic, very ephemeral business. You're dealing with people's dreams, you're dealing with people's images, and we felt, and when I say we, I mean the industry and I, felt it was very important for the students to have a fine arts component. We are also adding a visual presentation component that the display and exhibit department has written with us, which again, anybody that walks into the first floor of any department store knows that visual presentation and packaging and point of purchase is absolutely essential. So we feel that although those are not CM courses, they're certainly a vital part of the program.
CM?
Cosmetic marketing. That's our CM, is our catalog title. We also are requiring French, again on the advice of our industry, and we are adding a social science selective so that the students will be able to take a global course. The cosmetic and fragrance industry has been global for almost from its beginnings. And unlike some of industries in the United States who are just discovering what global is, I can tell you that essential oil suppliers, who are the people that actually make the fragrance, are located in China, they're in Singapore, they're in Turkey, they're all over the world. And they always have been. They're in South America. It's very, very important for our students to understand other cultures because every company they work for, no matter how small, no matter how large, is already global in their thinking. Estee Lauder is a company that has had an international senior vice president for almost as long as they've been known. I am sure that if people read newspapers, they know that Estee Lauder has opened stores in old Eastern Bloc countries. So we're very excited about that. We also have a summer trip. It is a course. It is CM 351. It is a summer study course. I take the students. They receive 3 credits for this. They write a research paper. We go to London and visit the Estee Lauder marketing offices where they discuss the difference between marketing Estee Lauder cosmetics and fragrance in the United Kingdom and Europe, juxtaposed to the United States, and there are major differences. We also, in the afternoons, spend a marvelous afternoon in Petersfield in their factory where we see emulsions, moisturizers, and cosmetic products being made. We spend better part of a day at Revlon with their marketing department and their PR department. And this is always interesting for the students because Revlon in the UK is positioned in the class market, and Revlon in the United States is in mass. And there's some very interesting marketing conversations that go on with
Explain those terms to us.
class marketing in this country would mean major department stores, Bloomingdale's, Saks, Macy's, Bergdorf's, Magnum's, and mass are your drug chains and the Kmart's and the Walmart's, and where Revlon in this country is very, very strong. We also spend time in London with aromatherapy. We visit Neal's Yard and Culpeper's and Molton Brown. The Europeans are far deeper into aromatherapy than we are. We are just beginning to touch it in this country.
Explain what
Aromatherapy basically is the use of essential oils and or herbs to promote well-being, to relax you, to enhance your day, and it's fascinating. It's a very old science, if you can call it a science. And they have now the psychologist, Dr. Van Toller at the University of Warwick in Coventry, London. We visited 1 year, and their entire research at the graduate level is on what different aromas and smells do to the human, because the olfactory system is the most sensitive and directly connected to the brain. So there's a great deal of work being done there, and that's always interesting for the students. In France, we visit a bottle factory in Normandy that has been manufacturing perfume bottles since the 1600s. We visit Givenchy's Color Cosmetics, which is also in Normandy, and see them actually manufacturing the color cosmetics, which is very interesting to see lipstick being actually manufactured. We visit the Hermès perfume factory in Normandy, which is very special because now we are talking luxury market. The Hermès perfume factory it's a privately held company. When we finish the tour of the factory, we then go into Paris to the boutique on Rue Faubourg and go upstairs. The original family lived above the store in the 1800s, and there's a private museum.
Which family is that?
Hermès, which is extraordinary. Everything with Hermès has to do with horses, because they originally were saddle makers. And one of the most extraordinary things to see when you go to the store, which is the original store, the ateliers, they still have on the very top floor the saddle makers hand-making leather saddles, which is their original, and the students, of course, are blown away because they cannot imagine people doing anything like this. So they are exposed then to that very high-end luxury market, which is important for them to understand. We also visit Pierre Denard, who I mentioned earlier, who is the bottle designer, and we see them actually have in their atelier, which is just outside Paris, bottles being created and also being designed. We visit the bottle factory first. Actually, we probably ought to reverse that, but geographically, coming from London, from Normandy into Paris, it just works better. We visit Quest International, which is an essential oil house, where we have a presentation on the families of fragrance and do a lot of sniffing of different essential oils and different fragrances. And Yves Desceris does a wonderful presentation, decade by decade, of what was happening historically and culturally and what fragrances were important and how they tie in together. And that's always a special day. We also visit L'Oreal, which of course is a huge French company. And the students are very familiar with because L'Oreal products are readily available in this country. The students do have a free weekend in London. They have a free weekend in Paris, so they're able to visit the museums and get a sense of the culture. Our last leg of the journey is a train trip from Paris to Cannes, and obviously that's on their wonderful rapid trains, which is a wonderful experience for our students who are used to the Long Island Railroad. And we visit in Grasse two of the essential oil suppliers. One is Monfils. That is a very special day because now the students actually see the roses being translated into oils and absolutes. They see oak moss. They see all of the actual products being made into going through either distillation or steam processes and becoming the absolutes and the oils. They see the room, the menthol room, which is just this huge room with drawers and drawers and drawers of menthol. One would never have sinuses if you worked in the menthol room. And they're always amazed that menthol is part of ingredients. There are 300 or 400 ingredients that are used in fragrance, so there's a great deal to see and learn. They're always very generous, as all of them are. We have lunch at this wonderful little restaurant high above Bar Salou, where the factory is and where most of the people in the factory live. This is a privately owned company, and the family is very supportive of having the students. One thing I'll say about that trip is that they don't usually have students, and they just bend over backwards to make it a wonderful learning experience. Then the next day we go to Givaudan Roure, where there is a school of perfume that is only for Givaudan Roure. Francois Marin, who runs it, has maybe 8 students, and she's very knowledgeable and talks with us about the fragrance, the perfume school. But because she's a native of Grasse, she also takes us on a walking tour of the town of Grasse, which is very, very old, going back to easily the 900s, and the cathedral from the 1100s, and she knows the history, and this is a wonderful cultural thing for the students to understand. And there also is a very important fragrance museum in Grasse, and Francois takes the students through, and there they see the processes that used to be when it was all done by hand, taking individual flowers, putting them in wax, letting them, absolutely unbelievable. And then Fragonard, the painter, lived in Grasse, and his home is there. And Francois always arranges with the deputy mayor of Grasse to have a reception for the students at the Fragonard house at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And they go through the Fragonard house, and of course all the wonderful paintings are in the Frick in New York, but they have replicas in the Fragonard house, and this is a rather special thing for the students. And the deputy mayor is quite young and very enthusiastic, and it's a wonderful way to end our trip. And I've spent time talking about that trip because it's a vital part of the program, and another way to explain how the industry supports us. Each student receives a grant based on really how much they need to help defray the cost of the trip. And this year, for example, we meaning the Action Council, are underwriting almost $40,000 for support for the students to go on that trip. They would like every student to be able to go, and so would I. But there are some students that cannot take a month out of their work life or for whatever reason. But again, it's a perfect example of how industry and education can work to make this a very meaningful experience. The last thing I want to talk about is the newest thing. We are working with Bruce Chambers, the new Dean of Graduate Studies, on a graduate program. This graduate program will certainly be for students who have graduated, but more importantly for the industry. I've lost track of the number of phone calls that I've had from people working in industry who want to come to FIT and take courses. And so we're working on a master's program, which we haven't named yet, but Bruce likes to call it the Aroma Trades, and we want to make it, which I love, and we want to make it important enough and meaningful enough. We are working closely with industry people, and we're having another meeting next week, and the first step is the letter of intent to Albany. Obviously, we would be the only college in the country with such a program, and I think we would have a very, very wonderful market of people in the industry. We envision this running late in the afternoon from 4 to 6 or 7, so that it would be designed. And I think that is going to really be the meaningful next step in the cosmetic and fragrance program at FIT. Obviously, you can tell that I love the program and the industry. Our students, we have very good placement history with our students. We work very hard at placing our students. And our first graduating class in 1990, we now have a good alumni record. We keep accurate records. and the students are doing extremely well, and we're very pleased. One of the nice things about this is we now have a former student as a mentor, and that's really wonderful. And when I go to the industry events, I inevitably see at least half a dozen of the students who have graduated, and that's a wonderful testament to the college and to the program. And it has been my great pleasure to talk about this very special program at a very special college.
How many students do you have in the program?
We usually run with the two classes somewhere around 46 to 48 students. This year, the applications are dramatically up. I think that may be because of all the publicity we've received for the fragrance program. We've had an enormous amount of publicity on the Fragrance Studio. And we may be running two sections. Certainly, if not this year, I suspect next year, which will increase the numbers again.
And most of the students are from where?
Most of our students are currently from the FBM department, Nassau Community College, Brookdale, Westchester Community. Yes, occasionally we have a student from another school, but that is our primary mix at the moment.
Could you describe the students? Are they mostly women, or?
They are mostly women. We have had each year one or two men in the program. This year, the class that entered in the fall, we did not have any men, but we have several applications in the new pile with men. Most of the students have some awareness of the industry. Most of them, of course, see it from behind the counter. They see the store end, but they know that they want to be in the industry. Some of them have a great deal of understanding of the industry. Some of them already work behind the counter. But I think most of the students that I interview and accept into the program have a fairly good sense that they want to be in the cosmetic and fragrance world. They're not quite sure what they want to do. Ultimately, what they end up doing, as we find, is that we do have a number of students that go into sales. Not counter sales, but regional sales and or counter managers in the stores. We have people as assistant product developers. We have people, now that we have the fragrance component, we have people working in the fragrance houses as assistant evaluators. We have people in market research. We have people in magazines. We actually have two people in magazines. Graduates we're talking about, yes.
And are the students the first year of college in their family? Are they from working class backgrounds?
I think that most of our students are primarily the same profile as the FIT student, coming from middle class working families. Occasionally we have a few students who come from a different profile, but in the main they're basically our FIT profile.
Mostly American students? Mostly
American, although because the population at FIT is also changing, we have had Hispanic students and Oriental students in almost in every class except the first graduating class.
Okay, those are students who are here though?
Yes, yes.
You don't have international
We do
students?
not have international students. I suspect down the road that will happen. I think that's inevitable.
And you mentioned the role of Hazel Bishop. Could you dwell upon that and explain a little more about how she played a role in
Well, Hazel
the
was the
college?
person who Jack Rittenberg first contacted and came and worked on the original curriculum for the AAS degree program. She taught in the program. She set up the original advisory board, and she stayed on at FIT as a consultant for a year after I took the program over to make it a 4-year program. And because it was necessary to have some continuity, and she was a remarkable woman. She is, I believe, Jack Rittenberg is really the person that knows this better than anyone at the college. Hazel is a very old lady now, but she's still, I believe, living in a nursing home in Rye. But she was a giant in the industry. You know, the interesting thing about the industry in this country is that when the industry was in its infancy, there was Elizabeth Arden, there was Helena Rubinstein, there was Hazel Bishop, and and Estee Lauder, and it's a wonderful industry for women, although because there's always been a component of women at very high level positions. Now, of course, Charles Revson, the famous Charles Revson of Revlon, is certainly in that same time frame. But I think that if you look at the companies today, you see a very strong component of women, and it's very important.
Are they mostly family operations?
No. What has happened in the cosmetic industry is that they are mostly large companies like Unilever that have bought up the private companies, very much like all industry. The fragrance industry is a little bit different. They're still family-owned companies in the essential oil houses, and there are many. And the only company that really began doing this that was a known company was Prescriptives, but there are certainly people working in that area, and it's a growth market, and it's an area where I think entrepreneurs have really gotten a good foothold. I think that I'm not saying anything the cosmetic industry wouldn't agree with. I think that the major companies simply did not address this issue in a very timely fashion.
The ethnic market.
The ethnic market, because there's the black market, there's the Hispanic market, there's the Asian market. There's an enormous ethnic market that clearly wasn't addressed. All one has to do is look at the ads. In the fragrance industry, of course, is an entirely different situation, because there you're not. The differences in the fragrance industry is the ethnic market is not in this country, but it's the global market. It's, for example, scent in Japan is viewed very differently than it is in this country, and it's very difficult to sell fragrance to Japanese women, although there certainly is some inroads there. But as far as the United States ethnic customer, there's not a problem, but clearly in cosmetics.
You were mentioning the industry keeps in touch. Are there any special industries you'd like to, mention that have been particularly important besides Hazel Bishop and?
Well, I think that the major people, Annette Green, and the Fragrance Foundation board, which are made up of all the CEOs of the major fragrance companies, certainly have been giant help. Annette has done so much personally for the program, and she is my mentor on top of everything else. There are certain companies through the mentor program. We have mentors from Estee Lauder, we have mentors from Chanel, we have mentors from Revlon, we have mentors from Quest International. The essential oil house names people don't recognize, but we have enormous support from Givaudan Rohr, from Monfils. Very important. We could not survive without this. We really couldn't.
Did Jack Rittenberg, FIT, initiate the program, or did industry?
Jack Rittenberg, when he was the dean, and again, this was prior to my being at FIT, and my understanding is that Jack, in conversation with people in the industry, saw an opportunity for FIT to fill, again, a niche that wasn't being addressed. And I know that he contacted Hazel and worked with Hazel and people in the industry, because Annette was involved in the program even early on, and that was through Jack.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell about the program?
I think, Carol, I've covered all of the essentials of the program.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.